Welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debates. Tonight we'll be focusing on a very important file, which is Egypt's diplomacy and role during the past period in regional and international conflicts and crises that are taking place. The world in a state of upheaval that has not been seen in decades, multiple conflicts, multiple crises and challenges and threats, and moreover that already is coming on long-standing conflicts in various parts of the whole world. Terrorism continues to plague the whole world, illegal migration, many of the pandemics that took place, economic crises, and all that. Egypt has always been a strong advocate of peace and stability, and that was the constant diplomacy of Egypt during the past period. It has always promoted for the spirit of cooperation, adherence to the principles of the international law, treaties and covenants, and support of all the world bodies' efforts. Cairo has thus been resting on its long establishing neutrality, independent will, and has conducted a balanced foreign policy in its various spheres of interests, or what they call a robust diplomacy, enabling it to be accredited, acceptable mediator in many of the regional and international problems, and work together with other countries rather to counter regional threats, safeguard the regional security and stability. The Egyptian moves, the Egyptian diplomacy, how it acted during different crises or occurring crises, this is the focus of our debate tonight with our very distinguished guest, Dr. Ibrahim Ghazzawy, expert in international relations. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on the top stories of the day. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met on Thursday with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resources, Engineer Tariq Al-Mulla, Minister of Public Business Sector, Engineer Mahmoud Ismat, Major General Staff Walid Abu al-Majd, Director General of the National Service Projects Agency of the Armed Forces, Major General Staff Abdel Fattah al-Salam, Abdel Salam Shafiq, President of the Egyptian Company for Mining Management and Exploitation of Quarries and Salines. Presidential spokesman Councillor Ahmed Fahmy said that the meeting dealt with presenting the ongoing efforts to develop Egypt's benefits from mineral resources, especially from the tantalum ore, of which Egypt has great reserves and is considered one of the precious and rare elements that are used in many advanced industries such as aircraft components, electronic and electrical circuits, phones and laptops, as well as manufacturing some of the medical components such as prosthetic slides and artificial joints. He added that the President directed the continuation of work to optimally manage and exploit the mineral wealth and raw materials available in Egypt, stressing the importance of adopting the best methods of modern management, governance and advanced technological technologies in a way that maximizes the added value of Egypt's mineral wealth and contribute to strengthening the industrial plan of the state and the national economy. Moving on to our next top story of the day, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a meeting with Dr. Mohammed Awad Tajuddin, advisor to the President for Health and Prevention Affairs, to follow up on the executive position of a number of national initiatives in the health and medical care sector for citizens. Presidential spokesman Councillor Ahmed Fahmy stated that the President was briefed on the results of implementing the various presidential initiatives within the framework of the state's efforts to improve public health, directing in this regard to make the optimal use of the capabilities available in all institutions of the medical system, whether affiliated to the Ministry of Health or university hospitals, with the aim of boosting continuous success of these initiatives and the improvement of health services provided to citizens. Dr. Awad Tajuddin also presented the development in the implementation of the comprehensive health insurance system, clarifying the next steps and the time plan in this regard, as the President directed the continuation of the stages of implementing the system in order to reach desired goal to include all governorates of Egypt so that health coverage is provided to all citizens with the highest levels of efficiency and quality. Moving on to our third top story of the day, and Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry participated in Berlin's conference, or the Munich Security Conference, ministerial meeting on the peace process in the Middle East. The foreign minister said that the right to self-defense is indivisible for both the Palestinians and Israeli sides. He said that we aim to sidestep it to avoid entering into a vicious circle of reciprocal violence. The foreign minister spoke during a joint presser of the Munich group, which also included Germany, France and Jordan on Thursday in Berlin, referring to the foreign double standards concerning the right to self-defense amid the military escalation between Palestine and Israel. German Foreign Affairs Minister said that Israel has the right to self-defense, adding, however, that Israel has to maintain proportionally in its reaction. In response, Shoukry said rights are complete and indivisible. He said that no party has the right that exceed the rights of others. Entering the cycle of violence is linked to those who initiate violence. He added that the right of the Palestinian people to establish their own state must be respected and be acted upon. The top diplomat said that also there is certainly a right to self-defense, but it is an indivisible right and it's granted to both parties, but this is what we seek to avoid in order not to enter into a vicious circle of reciprocal violence that does not lead to the interests of both parties. He stressed that an open dialogue between the Palestinians and Israeli is necessary to resolve the conflict, and noted that the recent meetings in Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh, which brought together Palestinian and Israeli officials, represented progress in terms of implementing direct negotiations. Right, and from the Munich Security Conference that is taking place in Berlin to our episode tonight, and before we delve into our discussions, let's first have this quick report. And President Sisi discusses Sudan and Palestine with U.S. congressional delegation. Let's watch.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi discussed the latest regional developments, including the situation in the Palestinian territories and Sudan, with the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence in the United States Congress, Mike Turner, and a large delegation of both Republican and Democratic members of the committee. Presidential spokesman Councillor Ahmed Fahmy said that during the meeting, el-Sisi emphasized the importance of resuming negotiations between the Palestinian and Israeli sides to reach a fair and comprehensive settlement of the Palestinian issue per international reference points. He added that the head of state also highlighted Egypt's efforts to stabilize the ceasefire between the two sides and rebuild Gaza. The president stressed that a just and comprehensive peace would open new opportunities in the region for the benefit of all people. President el-Sisi also confirmed Egypt's position on the ongoing developments in Sudan and emphasized the need for national dialogue to achieve peace, stability and development there. Fahmy noted that the meeting affirmed the strength and durability of the strategic partnership between Egypt and the United States. The American side praised Egypt's pivotal role in achieving regional stability and peace and fighting terrorism. Both sides stressed the importance of continued cooperation and consultation at all levels to face the increasing regional threats and challenges. The meeting also included an open discussion between the President and the members of the U.S. Congress that focused on addressing the crisis facing many countries in the region and the deterioration of the humanitarian and economic conditions of millions of their population. The meeting was attended by General Abbas Kamel, the head of the General Intelligence Service, and John Rocher, the acting U.S. ambassador to Egypt. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has earlier met with U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who was visiting Cairo at the head of a high-level U.S. delegation. Meanwhile, Egypt has strongly condemned the Israeli forces' recent escalation of violence in the occupied Palestinian territories. A statement by the Foreign Ministry denounced the Israeli forces' shelling of Gaza, resulting in the deaths of 13 Palestinians, including children and women. Egypt also condemned the incursion of Israeli settlers into Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied Jerusalem under the protection of Israeli forces. The statement further criticized the continued invasions of Palestinian cities by Israeli forces, with the latest incident occurring in Nablus. Egypt stated that such attacks violate international law and principles of international legitimacy and undermine efforts to achieve security in the region. The statement stressed that these attacks not only exacerbate the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories, but also undermine efforts to achieve calm and reduce tension in the region within the framework of the agreements reached at the Sharm el-Sheikh and Aqaba meetings.
Right, welcome back, and let me again welcome our guest, Dr. Ibrahim Ghazzawy, expert in international relations. Thank you again for being with us.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Let me take here your reading in the regional scene, threats and challenges, and how Egypt is so far dealing with those crises in the scene at large.
Well, the region today, or nowadays indeed, is placed on a sizzling pot of very hot events, actually, which is very destabilizing factors of the most of the countries in the region, and probably it's unprecedented, such a volume of instabilities around us everywhere in the region, which is a message to the people of Arab countries that there must be something to be done in the near future to tackle such root causes of this chaos in the region. I call it chaos indeed, because it's very chaotic. If we look around us in the south, in Sudan, and in Libya, and in the west, and in east, in Gaza, between Palestinians and Israelis, in Syria and in Yemen, which will take us immediately to the result that we need to change the passage of things, how these people, how governments react. And when it comes to Egypt, Egypt has always been instrumental in terms of making peace and intervening, trying to bring the opposing partners of any problems together in any country, whether Arab countries or even African countries indeed. Egypt has always been presenting a very mild and peaceful diplomacy when it comes to foreign relations. And notably, since President Sisi have taken our responsibility, has placed Africa and Arab relations with Egypt on top of Egypt foreign relations agenda, And this is what we see today. Our Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri in Germany today for a conference around the Palestinian problems, especially nowadays with this aggressive reactions taken from the occupation troops in Gaza. This continuous hostilities committed repeatedly by the Israelis against Palestinians, which is also an issue that have to be raised and taken seriously with the European Union countries that used to stun us with their calls of human rights, respect, and justice, and all this, noble causes. But when it comes to, Israeli conflict with Palestinians, they talk about the right of Israelis of self-defense, but they didn't mention the right of Palestinians to have their own territory, their own state, their own independence, their own rights, the basic rights that are deprived from Palestinians. They don't pay much attention to that. Yes, we have to be just or fair. They offer humanitarian assistance to Palestinians, but they are not able to move forward with the last solution politically on the ground with Israelis. Egypt has always been there, even in middling, intervening to bring back this fragile peace between Israelis and Palestinians, which used to be violated repeatedly every couple of weeks with this violent intervention from Israeli troops into Gaza Strip or Gaza sector, sending a message of the superiority of the occupation power over Palestinians. Well, the case is, this region will be continuing in unstable, will be continuing in chaos, as long as this chronic issue of Palestinian-Israeli cause is not resolved. And this takes us back to 1948, when the problem started officially with the full occupation of Palestinian land by Israeli gangs at the time, and the declaration of Israel as a state until today. So we talk about tens of years today, with the problem of Palestinians are not moving forward. So I think today that yes, although Egypt and Saudi Arabia and other influential powers in the Arab world are trying to push forward towards solutions in Palestinian land, but still the situation is not even moving
very
one step ahead.
And a real vicious circle of violence.
Yeah.
And as said by the foreign minister, it is escalating, and there is a kind of double balanced standards towards
exactly, yeah.
Towards the issue, which is exacerbating the situation to other spheres.
Especially when we talk about international law and human rights, which is the main causes that the barriers that usually the Europeans are
references,
yes.
the legitimate references.
We have Security Council resolutions, presenting the solution of two states in the region, and there is no respect for international law or human rights.
Let me hear, before I go into this the escalation again of the Middle East stalemate here. Let me take of how Egypt dealt with different fines, and because, as you said respectively, and as it's obvious, there is a kind of threat from all sides.
In all directions, yes, yes, that's
so
true.
If we start off how Egypt dealt with the Sudanese file and the official position towards this issue, particularly of what concerns protecting and preserving the Sudanese people and the Sudanese unity, security, and stability at the same time.
Well, that's a long story indeed, and as I said, Egypt always, presenting the foreign diplomacy in such a way of, that display respect for international law and international relations, and respect for the neighboring countries, the principle of non-intervention into other countries' affairs. But when it comes to a country like Sudan, when it comes to a country like Libya, for Egypt, this is the depth of our national security here in Egypt. Sudan is, we consider it as the southern part of Egypt. We have, everything is mutual, and we have a very vast common ground for our interests and our
We've
future
shared our
aspirations.
destiny.
We shared
and,
everything
and
historically.
history and everything
And
for
actually,
decades.
in future, there is no other.
Centuries
Yes,
even.
yeah, exactly. And the same going to continue in future. Nothing going to change. I mean, it's inevitable for us to link our security with the security in Sudan. That's why, if we follow how Egypt have always been intervening to bring peace and stability to Sudan, it's not just a recent issue or a recent efforts from Egypt, but going back to 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, while there was still a conflict, an armed conflict between the south of Sudan and the north of Sudan. Egypt has done a lot to
Let me here take it from this point, Dr. Ibrahim, and efforts of Egypt to culminate the situation, the visit of the foreign minister to some of the neighboring countries, and contacts with the international consent powers and organizations, the African Union, the United Nations, the United States, and definitely regional powers, Saudi Arabia and others. How do you view those moves by Egypt, and why it is very obvious that Egypt is the most, or should be the most acceptable mediator in this issue?
Well, that's a good point indeed. The answer is so simple, because Egypt is the first country that will be hit by the fire that is going, emitting from a problem in Sudan.
It's not in our favor that things are explosive.
Egypt has a primary interest
Exploding,
in Sudan settlement, in Sudan security, in Sudan stability, in Sudan prosperity, in Sudan sustainable development. And I have to remind our distinguished viewers that in Egypt, we usually have more than 5 million of Sudanese living in Egypt in full state of citizenship, like Egyptians. That's not new. It goes back to tens of years. That's why when it comes to Egypt and Sudan, we have this this true sensation of unity between us. Not only the government, or even the people themselves. That's why Egypt's intervention into Sudan is being looked at as a very natural and spontaneous and also a must that happen. We have to do that. That's our duty towards our brothers in Sudan, and that has been reflecting through opening the border points between Sudan and Egypt for our brothers, Sudanese brothers, and even other nationalities to get into Egypt seeking security. Or fleeing the conflict that is taking place there. But that's, by the way, that's not the solution. From the other hand, Egypt is doing a lot in terms of diplomacy, whether through the president himself with his connections and his calls and mutual relations with other African leaders, other world leaders, or the foreign minister who have been roaming the area in Africa and Europe and the States, trying to find an effective way of intervention to bring the Sudanese brothers together on the negotiation table and to put a quick end to this, awkward conflict, I have to call it. This is very awkward indeed. Sudan needs deeply development, not armed conflict.
Indeed.
Sudanese people deserve needly development and security, not armed confrontations.
Egypt has been advocating for a peaceful solution, for non-interference in the domestic affairs of other countries indefinitely.
That's true.
But this time it also insisted for no interference with negative positions or negative
well, yes,
interference.
that's true. That's true. Well, that is
And
also,
of course,
yeah,
that means an African solution, or a solution from sides that can really move things in a positive way.
It must happen that way. Well, there is no way to bring stability back to Sudan without, our Sudanese brothers and those in power, those who are controlling the situation in Sudan today, to realize that there must not be any foreign intervention into Sudan. Any foreign intervention in Sudan would lead the situation to more dramatic and more disastrous trajectories of events in Sudan. And as I always say, if the people themselves in Sudan are not aware of the necessity for them to sober and to stand up, to stop in the face of this conflict and to put an immediate end to these confrontations, no other country will be keen to protect them if they are not keen to protect themselves. From Egypt's side, yes, and if you look into Egypt's position with Sudan and similarly with Libya, it's our national security to be there and to intervene in such a way to bring peace and stability, sustainable peace and stability, not to support one partner against the other, or not to make the balance of power goes toward one partner of the story or the conflict against the other partner. That's not the case for Egypt. The case for Egypt is development and stability. The case in Egypt is security, simply because security in Sudan is touching in all aspects, all possible aspects, touching the security of Egypt. If you talk about economy, if you talk about culture, if you talk about religion, if you talk about education, training, all these aspects, there is, a lot of repercussions. That, what happened in Sudan has a lot of reflections in the situation in Egypt. That's why our intervention into the Sudanese problem today is a
We're
must
not really
for us.
intervening, it's a kind of mediation.
Intervention
Yes.
Through mediation,
Yes,
that's what I
definitely.
mean, the mediation, because it's not in our interest that we support one party against the other. Our interest is to bring peace, sustainable peace, and to bring all different or opposing partners in the Sudanese issue, to bring them all together to the negotiation table and help them reach a stable and sustainable manner of living together.
And from the south to the east, and the eruption of escalation in violence in the Palestinian-occupied territories. Definitely the Palestine file has been always a top priority file for Egypt for years and years. How do you view the escalation, this escalation at this very particular timing, and why?
Well, I think the current Israeli government feels that they have to show their muscles to the Palestinians, or seeking some political gains internally in Israel. The current Israeli government have reached, power not long ago, but through a very complicated and difficult, political scene in Israel itself. And the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu used to do that whenever he wanted to gain some political gains internally, as if the situation, whenever he is more aggressive with Palestinians, that gives him more, depth and support in Israeli side. Remembering also that very recently, just a couple of weeks ago, he was facing a very violent and large mass protests against his, project of judicial reforms, or what he called judicial reforms laws. And probably that, this escalation that is taking place today is one way of diverting, attention from, his internal issues to make it national, interest for Israelis, gaining more support from one side. From other side, that's not new from Israelis that have been taking place repeatedly.
Is it just political gains?
It's just political gains, yeah.
Or more pressures that are being put on Egypt at this very particular time?
Yeah, well, that's another issue because Egypt today is, dividing attention on Sudanese side and Libyan side and Palestinian side, and that, and luckily Egypt is stable enough and powerful enough to still open our border for our brothers to come here and find, a secured asylum for themselves.
Safe haven.
And safe haven. And we are very proud to be, even through these difficult times and difficult problems that most of the world countries are facing today economically, but Egypt is still open, and Egypt is open for providing security and safe haven for our brothers.
A good news at least. The Syrian returned to the Arab League and to the Arab fold. Which is a beginning of coordination between Arabs, and even if it's a step for a step return. But before we delve into our discussion, let me first take this report. And Syria's return to the Arab League is a beginning of coordinating Arab efforts. Let's watch.
Egypt has affirmed that Syria's return to the Arab League represents a starting point for an organized and coordinated Arab engagement in the Syrian crisis. Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid said Syria's return to the League comes after 12 years in which the international community and superstates have failed to tackle the crisis and find a political solution. He stressed that the Syrian people have been the party that suffered over the past decade from the crisis that resulted in the spread of terrorism, destabilizing regional security, and spread of drug trafficking. In an emergency meeting for the Arab League on Sunday, the Arab foreign ministers agreed to readmit Syria into the Arab League after more than a decade of suspension. The ministers also agreed to form a contact group formed from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, and the Arab League Secretary General to follow up with the Syrian government on the measures to resolve the Syrian crisis. In a press conference after the meeting, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry called for the Syrian government and components, as well as the international community and relevant countries, to fulfill their responsibilities to ensure Syrian stability. During the presser, Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmed Abul Ghait, also stressed that Syria's return to the League does not reflect the end of the Syrian crisis, noting that the contact group will follow up on the measures of resolving the crisis. Meanwhile, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad received an invitation to next week's Arab Summit in Saudi Arabia, the first such invitation since the country's war began in 2011. The invitation comes a day after Riyadh and Damascus announced that work would resume at their respective diplomatic missions in Syria and Saudi Arabia after more than a decade of severed ties.
Right, welcome back, and back to you, Dr. Ibrahim, and the return of Syria to the Arab fold after years of solitary and inability of the international community to resolve the Syrian crisis and the suffering and end the suffering of the Syrian people. How do you view that?
Well, that's very late move indeed, but better to happen late, than never happen. Well, the Syrian problem did not only start in 2011. It started when a decision was taken to dispel Syria from the Arab League. It gets more worse, simply because that could be very much of negative effect into how the problem is taking place on the ground in Syria in the absence of the Arab world. That's not helping to get solutions. And it took us probably more than 10 years to realize that we have to, review this process and bringing back Syria to be embraced by the Arab League again. So that was really very good move, and we have to remember that the start of the problem in Iraq in 2003 started with the removal of Saddam Hussein. And it was, at that time marketed that this is.
Actually, it started with the U.S. invasion to Iraq.
Exactly, and it was marketed and presented to the world that was the open gate for a democratic Iraq, which has never happened, with more than a million Iraqi killed and destabilized country until today, and
which we don't know up till this minute. Where are those mass destructive weapons that we've heard about? Neither did we hear any apology for
it had been
destructing
proven that it was a huge swindle and a huge lie from the American President George Bush at the time. And he knew, and Tony Blair knew in Britain that report telling that Iraq or Saddam Hussein army has weapons of mass destruction, they knew that was a fabricated report, by the way. So even the basis for this removal of Saddam Hussein and U.S. intervention into Iraq at 2003 was absolutely not legal, and based on faked evidence of feared aggression from Saddam Hussein's side. So will we wait until this story be repeated in Syria? Oh, well, that shouldn't happen. I mean,
years of inability of the whole international community to end the suffering of people who
Exactly. And that has to tell us, as Arabs and Arab leaders, of course, that the decisions of any Arab country should be taken within the Arab house, not outside.
How did Egypt act so far in this? Because in this very particular Syrian file, even if it is a step for step, because there are also some steps needed from the Syrian side.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did Egypt meddle in this particular file, and what should be the upcoming Syrian steps?
Well, Egypt is just continuing on our conventional line of supporting Arab countries, with, of course, Syria included, of course. And Egypt has always been supportive to stability in Syria through our foreign policy, through the efforts of President Sisi in different international arenas, telling that the Syrian solution, the solution for the Syrian problem is not going to be through war or through armed conflict, but it has to be internally a Syrian business that have to be managed by the Syrian people themselves. That have been always the declared position of Egypt government. And today, the ball is brought back to the start point after this long years, that we have to trust that Syrians are able to identify solutions to themselves with the support of the Arab world in the Arab League, within the Arab house. And I have to tell that what happened in Syria lands today, in the last years, while the conflict is going there, has been turning Syrian territory into a battlefield for international powers, for Americans, for Russians, for European countries, for territorial powers. Is that the solution that was seen at the time to bring stability to Syria, or was it the removal of al-Assad just from power, is that a solution to anything? Or
has any of the foreign interference served the causes of or interests
never,
of any
never,
of any
never,
countries?
never, never. And we have probably the latest, closing point in the American intervention into Afghanistan, which was, ended with this,
Taliban taking
this
place.
dramatic, withdrawal from American troops after more than 30 years in full presence in all its strengths in Afghanistan, and the outcome is just nothing, nothing.
If I may ask here my last question, and as we are seeing, the whole Arab world is really facing lots of challenges and many threats, enormous threats. What is requested today from the Arab world, and I'm speaking about all the Arab countries all together?
Challenges that we face today are unprecedented in reality, and unfortunately, if we are keeping the same line of things, of managing our issues in the Arab world as it usually went in the past, we are even coming to more disasters in the future. Hopefully this is not going to happen, but what we have to do is to realize not the Arab people, because the Arab peoples in different countries, they realize that we have to be together. We have to come all together in Arab world, and we have to unify our causes and our problems. But all
and
the
our
Arab
stances,
and
by the
our
way,
stances
together,
everything. And the Arab leaders today are in a real examination of their belonging to their countries by bringing Arab countries all together, by empowering Arab League in terms of creating productive and sustainable relations between Arab countries. And I'm quite sure that if this happens, most of our problems will be resolved in just a few years. But unfortunately, we don't do a lot but we have a lot of problems between the Arab countries themselves. In most of the cases, the foreign relations with Arab countries are much better than the Arab countries' relations together.
Interrelations.
So hopefully today we realize that we need each other more than ever today. And I'm quite sure that this is not a luxury today. This is a move that must happen. And if this doesn't happen, we should expect more models of Sudan and Libya and Yemen and Iraq and Syria to happen in the near future. Hopefully this is not going to happen, but only if we realize that we are on the fringe of a lot of problems to happen if we don't come together.
It has never been throughout history luxurious to keep our brotherly relations together.
That's true. That's true.
And unity has always been a must.
That's true.
And yes, we are not in need for any more destructed countries. We need.
Well, if you may allow me for just a few seconds to give just an example of the plight we face today. Sudan, that is considered to be the richest of not only of Africa and Arab, but the world in terms of agriculture. Sudanese people today are waiting for assistance, food and other assistance coming from abroad because of the problems.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my time is out. It would take us more and more of hours to speak about such issues, but Dr. Ibrahim Ghazzawy, expert in international relations, we thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And for your input.
Thank you.
And dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Next debate will be on Sunday with other important topics. So many thanks for watching and good night.